Welcome to my dad's car. Enjoy!
Welcome to My Dad's Car, a podcast discussing our personal relationship with automotive nostalgia. And you know what? It doesn't even have to be about your dad's car. It can be your mum's, your grand's, your parents', guardians, or even a neighbour's. If it made an impression, let's talk about it. How you doing, Danny?
Hi, I'm all right. How are you?
Not too bad.
Hiya, Danny.
Hi, John.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, if we jump into it, the first question we normally ask is, what's your earliest car memory?
My earliest memory of any car was actually travelling in the back of my grandparents' Triumph 2000.
Okay.
And that is, it's really, really vivid because he used to take me on holiday. And it was also a new car.
Wow.
Because my mum and dad always got second-hand cars and quite rough ones at that. But the Triumph was a new car in 1972. And so it was really cool. And it had an overdrive. It had a switch in the top of the gear lever. You flicked it and you felt the push in your back. It was the coolest thing. It made a great noise, 6-cylinder engine. It looked cool, Italian styling. It was just a fantastic thing.
What colour was it, Danny?
It was brown, which in the 70s was a cool colour. It wasn't even sienna brown. It wasn't a cool brown. It was russet brown. That's not cool brown.
And what about the interior? What was the...
It was brown.
Brown on brown.
Honestly, you get in it and you literally disappeared if you had a tan. So it was as brown could be. But like in the mid-70s, brown's coolest colour, apart from orange, probably. Anyway, this car was the highlight of my life for a bit because it had everything that my dad's cars didn't have. My dad started with an A30, which he welded up the floor with a biscuit tin. I kid you not. I know it's cliche, but it actually happened. Then we went on to a 100E, and then a 105E. So side valve engines, my dad learnt them. But around 1975, 76, we got our first Ford Cortina Mark 1. It was like a spaceship had landed on the driveway. And that's my first memory of my dad, really my connection with my dad, if you like, was sitting in the garage with him, watching him lapping in valves on the Kent engine that was in our first Cortina, and then putting the head back on the car so that mum could give him a lift to the station on Monday morning. That is, and I held his spanners, I watched what he was doing, we talked, he told me what he was doing. I was like, it's the best thing ever. Me and dad fixing the car so that mum's got something to drive next week. I love that. I think that gave me the idea that home mechanics, there's something heroic about it. If you can fix your own car, you're a proper person. You know, you're not helpless, you're self-sufficient. You've got this. And that's why I think actually there's more to home restoration and servicing your own stuff than meets the eye, especially if there's a bit of necessity about it as well. You're doing it for a reason. I think it's a really wholesome thing, and I, you know, my love for my dad went through the roof when I started helping him work on cars, and that was paid back later on when my first car had a Morris Marina, 80 quid. Thanks very much. And a head gasket went within weeks. Of course, it did. And Dad came up to Birmingham University where I was studying with a head gasket and said, "Right, off you go." And he was there in a consultative capacity, and I did my own head gasket and he helped my spanners. And that was another rite of passage moment. You know, it's a really important thing, I think. And I think it's something kids these days, they just miss out on. You just don't do it. You're not going to get dewy-eyed repairing your iPhone with your dad, are you? It just doesn't happen anymore. Such a shame.
We mentioned on another podcast recently about how that kind of culture of fixing stuff until it's no longer fixable is kind of gone. Obviously, you just buy stuff now, and if something breaks, you buy a new one. It's a shame.
Well, I wouldn't say it's gone.
Or it's going. It's fizzling.
It's gone from everyday culture. It's gone from your everyday. It's thriving and alive in the pages of Practical Classics magazine. We're growing. You know, our circulation is growing as a print title, which is remarkable. And it's also, I think, thriving in the proliferation of car restoration programs we've got, stuff like the repair shop. Who knew Who would have thought that would have been the massive success that it has been?
Yeah, true.
And I think it's because people have a hunger. They have a hunger for this idea that they can fix things, they can keep things going. It's green, it's upcycling, it's recycling, it upskills you, it makes you more competent, makes you more self-sufficient. The positives stack up, and on top of them all, and I really believe this, it's good for your mental health. I know that when I've had a tough day at work, if I can go out to a workshop and fix something or break it then fix it, right? I feel brilliant. I feel a whole lot better. It's my gardening, you know, it's my salvation. It's a bit of soul food. And I'll take you further down this route of fixing your soul as well as your car. I read a book at university which absolutely backfills spiritually what I'm talking about. And the book is called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Right, Robert Percy.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's a superb book. There's a lot of West Coast spirituality in it, which is, you know, take it or leave it. But at its core, it's when you fix something, especially something reasonably complex, and make it work again, then you've committed a good act. You have done a high quality act that reflects back on you. And I know this is true because when I work on stuff and fix things, you walk away from a workshop after 3.5 hours of hitting something with a hammer, totally chilled out. Most chilled man on earth. It's fantastic. So I think all of that works. The end of the story with the Triumph is that my grandfather bought it new in 1972 and he drove it until the day he died. And he passed away in 1994. Then the car went to live with my grandmother for a bit, and then she bought a Volvo, and it went to live with my auntie. And then the clutch went, and it lived in her barn from just before the turn of millennium until I said to her 6 years ago, look, the Triumph is beginning to dissolve, and if you just leave it there, it will. Why don't you let me have it and I'll restore it and I'll do it in a mag. We talked about it, and in the end I did. I took it away and I spent 2 years restoring it. A lot of body work, full respray.
Is it still brown?
It's still brown because it's going to stay that way, because that's the point. It's not the coolest colour, but that's the colour we remember.
Yeah.
That's the colour that touches me whenever. And the other thing that stays the same as well, and this might sound a bit weird, but I don't think it is weird. I don't know how weird you're going to think it is.
Does it smell of something?
I was going to say, has it still got the new car smell? Yeah.
Yeah, it does smell of something. Yeah. Okay, my grandfather was a great pipe smoker. He loved a bit of rough shag. He loved his St. Bruno. And the roof lining above the driver's seat, he'd have a pipe on the way to work and a pipe on the way home from work, and the roof lining is stained brown. And on a hot day, you can just catch the edge, the faint smell of tobacco in the car. That's never leaving. I'm never getting rid of that. People get in and go, what's going on there, Danny? That's not very nice. I don't care. That's my memory. It's my granddad smoking a pipe. And he was an eminent man. He was probably the greatest optical physicist who's ever lived. He invented the zoom lens. He's acknowledged as being the father of the fiber optic cable. He was nominated for 2 Nobel Prizes.
Wow.
He was the part of the team that invented the contact lens. He invented the laser optics inside a CD-ROM.
Wow.
So he is a super eminent guy. And that car, therefore, is a great part of history. It's a really important part of history. And I'm honoured to have restored it. And it's the car that I will keep forever. It's the first car I remember travelling in. But I don't know about you guys as well. My nostalgic kick comes from not sitting in the driver's seat driving it, because I never did. It comes sitting in the back seat because that's where we all had our first trips, in the back seat, looking at the back of our parents' heads or our grandparents' heads. So that's where the nostalgia kicks in for me.
It's true in a way. You think about one of your dad's favourite cars, you kind of consider getting one for yourself. But like you say, if I was to get something and drive it, would it be the same? Would it be, like Andy said before, like meeting your hero, that kind of thing? Would it be disappointing?
I always have low expectations or not low. I have realistic expectations. What was good back in the day, it doesn't count as good in the same way now. You have to contextualize it, don't you? I have to admit, my dad went on from the Cortina. He graduated, if you could call it that, to an Austin 1800 Landcraft, and he had 2 of those in a row, and he loved them. Partly because of the engineering, because they are a genius piece of engineering. When they were introduced, the use of interior space was extraordinary. It was Issigonis' favourite car.
Okay.
It's like a giant Mini. In terms of body shells, it had the highest torsional rigidity of any production car when it was introduced. So it is a work of genius. It's just got the BMC B series engine, so it's deadly slow. But it is brilliant. We went on holidays to France in it. And I've had a couple. I've had a Wolseley 6, a bit heavy, but that was nice. And I've had an Austin 1800. It's like driving a bus in a way. It's a sort of sit up and beg. There are no comforts. The steering wheel sort of here, massive plate, but wheel at each corner. You've got that fabulous suspension, and it goes round corners flat. And you slowly get used to it. It's a different sort of driving, and I've always loved them. I must admit. Although when I was a kid, I had my head in my hands because my mate Stuart's dad, right? He bought a Ford Granada 3 litre, and then he got a Consul GT, and it was like you'd hear him coming, and then you'd hear the tyres squeak. It's like he was in a permanent episode of The Sweeney. And there's me in an Austin 1800. It just didn't work. So, but now I contextualize it now. I look back and I go, yeah, I understood why Dad was doing that at the time. Not good enough.
When your dad had the Cortina, Danny, in your school, were there lots of other kids whose parents had Cortinas? Because that seems to be the trend of.
Yeah, I mean, although it's a Mark 1 Cortina, remember, and in 1976 that was already a bit of an old car. Very old hat. A lot of my friends at school had a new car. So, even when I was 11, 12, it was a little bit sort of not very good.
Mm.
What year did the Cortina come out? Early 60s?
Yeah, 63, sorry.
Yeah.
So, I mean, by the end of the 60s, it was old because the Mark II was being made, and the Mark III had been and gone, and then the Mark IV, the first time he ever got an approaching new car was actually after the 2 Land Crabs. We got a Cortina Mark IV 1600L, 1.6L, sorry, with a vinyl roof.
Yeah. What colour was it? What colour was the car?
It was dark blue, so not the coolest colour, but still, I forgive that. But he didn't like it. He got in it. It was nice to drive, but there was no space. Compared to the cavern of the Austin 1800, there's literally no space in it, and it's a little bit flaky on the mechanical front. We did a couple of holidays in it, but he just said no, not really. Yeah, he put a tow bar on it so he could try a trailer because there wasn't enough room to go on holiday. So guess what we bought next? Is if he couldn't top the Austin 1800 in terms of slightly lumpen, not that sexy, dull but worthy. He got an Austin Ambassador. And it wasn't even a wire edge.
Oh.
Now, here's the funny thing. It was the good one. It was the 2 litre HLS with twin carbs. So it was, the big block with the fast road engine.
Were they a bit like a princess, the Ambassador?
They were a princess. Well, basically, they were the princess they should have made in the first place. It's basically a princess with a hatchback.
Okay.
When the princess came out with a boot. They re-engineered it, spent a lot of money re-engineering it, and introduced the Ambassador as a hatchback, which brought it up to date. And made it a proper competitor for the Renault 20 and 30 and that kind of thing. But they also softened the edges. They took away a lot of those lovely edgy styling things that you get with the Princess. It stopped being a proper wedge, really.
Yeah,
didn't look wedgy enough. Mm-hmm. And the killer for me, and this is the thing, at a time when everyone else was having 5-speed boxes and all that, still 4-speed, and that's just not good enough. You can't go there. They didn't make them for very long, but, and here's the but, Dad loved it because it did that same thing. It had that maximization of the internal space. It had a hatchback, very practical. 2 litre HLS engine. I wouldn't call it fast, but it wasn't as slow as an Austin 1800. And he went on holidays in that car for 10 years, including when he eventually succumbed and started towing a caravan. He towed a caravan with it and absolutely loved it. Then he gave it to me. So after I had my Marina at university and that eventually died, I got to play with the Ambassador for a bit. And it was great fun, I had my mates in it. And I definitely killed that car. But yeah, all the fun of the fair. And that, he himself, Dad, was an engineer. He was an aeronautical engineer for a while before he went to politics. And so he worked in the wind tunnel at Hawker Siddeley. And he loved interesting engineering. And I think that's why he went for the Austins, because they weren't properly developed. They could have been better. But what the input that went into them, the engineering input, was pretty impressive. And, if we had had a German attitude to the development of both those vehicles, they'd have been world beaters. Why was the Allegro launched with a boot and not a hatchback? Why didn't they press on with a proper engine for it so it didn't end up looking like a pudding? If the development had gone into cars like the Allegro would have been 205 of the 70s. Absolutely no doubt about that, because there's so much about it that was good. But when the accountants get in the way and they realise, well, maybe we won't get the same level of profit out of it, they back away. There's a really exciting and impressive statistic, which I can't quite remember accurately, but I'm going to give it a stab. And that is the comparison between Honda motorcycles and Triumph motorcycles in the 1970s. Honda's research and development department, something like 2,000 strong, and they were spending something like 35% of their profit in R&D. Triumph, the R&D department was, I think, about 15 people, and it was a minuscule amount they were spending on R&D. And that's all you need to know. We had it so good for so long. We got lazy, and I think probably got arrogant as well, and we got greedy. I think that's another thing. We got greedy for profit margins that just weren't realistic. And so the Germans and the Far East came and ate our lunch, and we had the engineering skill. That was the trouble. And yes, we had difficult industrial relations as well, but I will not have blame the unions. That's just not true. It's not the whole story. Yeah, there was difficult industrial relations. The unions were very belligerent, but between management and unions, they both conspired to destroy our industry. It wasn't just the unions.
It's getting heavy.
Yeah. This is good. I like this.
But it's good. It's really good.
Yeah, no, but it's just true. I just think it's important to say that. And actually, I've spoken to senior managers from Austin Rover and Leyland from at the time, and they said, yeah, we weren't playing the ball properly either. So, it's a really interesting period in history.
Yeah.
And it needs good research. I think if you approach it with a preconceived idea as to who you want to blame, then you're going to write a jaundiced view. I think if you have a more open mind, you'll look and see that the decisions made on both the side of the management and the unions were wrong. We could have done it differently.
So if we jump back into, say, the Cortina that your dad had, do you have a radio in there? Any music going on?
First one, no. Second one, yes. It was an aftermarket radio, so it was kind of screwed onto the bottom of the dash, and it had a speaker. I think either built into the dash or built into the underside of the radio.
Yeah.
You could just about hear it over the engine. It's beautiful, man. The Austin 1800 had a radio from new, and it had speakers in the doors.
Wow. What colour was the Land Crab?
The Land Crab, the first one was Harvest Gold, and the second one was a kind of very dark charcoaly green colour, which I've never seen since on any other car. I think it was a really rare colour. But both cars, then this is another thing, the engineering was excellent up to a point. Both cars were binned because the clutches went. And when a clutch goes on an Austin 1800 Land Crab, you have to take the engine out. There are lots of Land Crab owners one or two probably out there going, no, you don't. You can do it this way. Just let you. But the official way of doing it, that mechanics knew in the 1970s, was you take the engine out to replace the clutch. And that meant days of labour. And when you are running a cheap motor and you haven't got any money,
you're not going to do it.
So you sold it for scrap.
Yeah, you don't see many of them. I guess you obviously see a few more in your day job, but very rarely you see one of those going down the road, do you?
No, you don't. And it is a shame. The one I really loved, and it's interesting that this was Issigonis' least favourite car, was the Austin 3 Litre, which is based around a Land Crab centre shell, but with a big bonnet and a big boot, and it's a straight six driving the rear wheels rather than a transverse engine.
They were like a sort of Rolls-Royce rival. My dad's friend had one. They used to do weddings with it. A massive car.
Yeah, absolutely proper luxury car. Built to replace the Wolseley 6110, that kind of thing. As the Land Crab was built to replace the Morris Oxford and the Austin Cambridge. It used the BMC C series engine, which wasn't great. It went into the MGC as well, and it wasn't really great there either. The problem with it is because they used that utilitarian centre section where you've got that sit up and beg steering stance, and you've got those kind of the doors, you recognise the doors from a Land Crab, and those door handles, every BL car had it. So you're trying to create a premium product that really, you want to beat off Mercedes with it. And it's it's a Leyland parts bin car. You can't do that. And it's not fast enough, and it's really, really juicy as well. But I have a fascination for heroic failures and also a little bit of a penchant for the old land crab. So I found one in the garden once and restored it on the magazine and then drove it for a while. And I absolutely loved it. It had huge merit. The suspension obviously was really fascinating, but it also had a self-leveling rear suspension as well, which is a brilliant system. I believe it was invented by Alex Moulton as well. So once you let the engine breathe a bit better, I put an aftermarket exhaust on it, Weber carbs. It suddenly started to make sense in terms of performance. And I loved every minute of that car. It's a fantastic beast. Really, really enjoyed it. But I sat there thinking, what were they thinking? This could never compete with Mercedes. It's too humdrum. It's too proletarian. This is a blue-collar car pretending to be a white-collar car and failing. I mean, if they didn't see that, they're fools.
What sort of numbers did they do? Did they sell many of those cars?
No, they sold 3,000.
Wow.
Really?
And then they binned it. It just went, nah. Very quickly indeed. It was a huge amount of money and it was a huge failure. And Issigonis hated it. Issigonis hated anything with even hinted of luxury. He didn't like the Wolseley 6. He wanted everything to be Spartan. Cars were for transport. They were practical means of getting from A to B. The best thing he ever came up with was probably the Austin 1100, 1300 range, which were just perfect. And Britain agreed. It was the best-selling car in Britain for years.
Where was your dad picking the cars? Obviously, the new one he probably would have got from a dealership, but in terms of purchasing the other cars that weren't brand new, was he getting them out of sort of adverts or
Exchange and Mark and the back of the paper?
Oh, lovely.
And I think one of them came out of a piece of paper in a shop window.
Beautiful.
That's how we used to do it. Walking down the street and looking in a windscreen, So, yeah, it was never new. Even the Ambassador wasn't new. I think the Ambassador came from a proper dealership, though. But all the others were second-hand purchases, bought through the paper or Exchange and Mark. And he either sold them to the scrap man because he'd drive them till they broke, or he sold the second Cortina Mark 1, the white one, to my Uncle Fred, God rest his soul. And he sold it for a tenner with 110,000 miles on it. And Uncle Fred drove that car for 10 years.
Wow.
And I think got it to 200,000. So that's good, pence per mile. That's pretty impressive.
Stonking value, that is.
It is startling value. And that's why fixing stuff really matters. That's why it's really good for the bank balance too.
Did you get involved at all, Danny, with the selection of the cars, or did you go along at all to do the viewings?
I'll go along and go, no, go and get a Granada. I was a bit slow. No, I was always up for a trip out, and Dad was he is my hero, so I'll just go along with it. Whatever he wanted, it was fine. I had my bike anyway, so it was okay. Pretended that was a Fireblade or whatever.
Were there any cars that he didn't own that you really wanted him to own?
Loads. All the cars.
Was there a standout?
Well, I think my Uncle John, who is still lives on the Isle of Wight and is a biker, he turned up one day in a Triumph Stag, and I just looked at Dad and went, see? I'd say, can we go out in it? Can you take the top down? And John would go, yeah, all right. And we'd go out in it, and he'd make the noise, because the Triumph Stag does make the best noise. And I just thought that was driving heaven. My dad's best friend, Bev, had an E-Type Jag in canary yellow back in the late 70s when you could pick them up for nothing. And I remember getting up on two wheels, going around a roundabout, sitting between my dad and Bev in the front, sort of on a cushion above the transmission tunnel. That was really unsafe, but we had a great time. When I think about the stuff my sister and I, in the Land Crab, when Dad was driving along, we'd tell him to go around roundabouts really fast because it's a Land Crab. And we'd huddle up to one side of the car. And then when he went around the roundabout, we would bundle each other across the back seat into the other door. And it just, because it was fun. We'd literally fight each other with the G-force making us roll along the back seat. And I was laughing, my dad was laughing, my mum was laughing. Can you imagine doing that now?
Someone would go, what about if the lock fails? That would kind of be the worry, wouldn't it? That the door will open and...
Yeah,
exactly. It seemed Dad just said, well, just flip the lock on, you'll be okay. Those were the days. It was fun times. And by the time the days of the Ambassador were over, I was already off at uni. But Dad's next car was a Rover 800, a really early one, a Rover 820i, CI, I think. But the really early shape, the proper one with the wedgy front. And I thought, and I still do actually, even though they were a bit flaky, I think that's a beautiful car. I think that cigar-shaped, edgy flank with that swage cut into it, I think that's a beautiful look. So he had one of those.
I think Tim's dad had one. That's kind of the SD1 sort of follow-on, isn't it?
Yeah, that was a car that replaced the SD1 in 87 or 8, I think.
Yeah.
What colour was that, Danny?
The dark metallic blue. Couldn't name it. And that was proper quick as well. Nice, quick, big car. He loved that car. But then after that, it launched its cam belt and the engine was no more. After that, he started getting into big Vauxhalls. And so he had 2 Vauxhall Senators, one the 12 valve, one the 24 valve. And then he had an Omega, 2 Omegas in a row, which he loved. Big V6s, never anything else. 3.2s. He absolutely loved them. And then now, after his final Omega, he was also the MP for Luton, so it's kind of important to own a Vauxhall. But now he drives a Jag. So he's finally achieved his Prescott ambition and is driving it's an X350. So the last of the sort of proper old school Jags. It's 4-litre V8 and he loves it.
Does he have 2 of them?
No, just one. He's nothing like the man Prescott was.
Okay, right. Give it time.
Flags on the front fenders.
Yeah, he should have, really, shouldn't he? It takes him to the workshop a lot and empties his wallet, and he doesn't mind. He's that age. He's like, yeah, that's okay, because I've got a Jag.
So do you think that what's driven you towards classic cars? Obviously, the fact your dad was driving older cars and you've got that sort of connection with them, and the fact you can fix them, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I think so, yeah. And partly, though, there is a bit of necessity about it. Cars that I've driven through my life have all been old cars, and I've enjoyed fixing them because they're cheap, and I can. In the 1990s, through the 90s, I was a professional actor, and I worked in London. And I remember the first sort of proper classic I ever had. I always wanted a sports car. Knew I'd never be able to afford one. And then I went and rehearsed a show called Sweeney Todd. And we were rehearsing on a farm. And in one of the barns on the farm, there was a Triumph Spitfire covered in hay. I bought it off the farmer for 200 quid. And I started trying to work out how to fix it. I knew I could do the engine, but the bodywork was another country to me. So I started reading Practical Classics. And that's when I started getting the mag, because it was full of great information. And it also had a sense of humour. And that's the thing that's always stood out to me, is that everybody I've ever met who really knows how to fix stuff always there's that workshop banter thing, which I think it's lovely. It makes everything, when everything's going wrong, if you can shout at somebody and throw a spanner at their head, then, life is better. So that was why I love the magazine, and that's why I started reading it and eventually started working for it. But I've always had classics, and that Spitfire became my London car. And I drive around London in it, going to auditions, being in shows. It had the best turning circle of any car I've ever owned, so that's useful. It looked super cool. It was a bit sheddy, which I loved. I've had 4 up in it, fantastic. There's a little space behind the driver's seat. There are 2 people sitting sideways, put the seats forward, game on, happy days. And when you want to fix it, the whole bonnet leans forward. You can sit on the front tyre. That's your office. That's where you work. So I love that car. And as for my love of classics in general, always love design, always love mechanics. I've always loved engineering that wears its engineering on the outside so you can see it. I hate the way that modern engineering has gone, which is like it keeps you away. You're not allowed to look under this piece of plastic. Do not get involved, because that's our job and we're going to charge you for it. I think actually, for me, manufacturers have made modern cars deliberately difficult for the home mechanic because they want to make money out of us. Simple as that. That's where they make the profit. Yeah. I think, I absolutely wholeheartedly believe in the European legislation they want to bring in about making sure that any modern machine that's sold to the public has to be repairable, because we're throwing stuff away that shouldn't be thrown away all the time. And that's why ULEZ is total nonsense. We're throwing viable machinery away and forcing ourselves to buy new creating a massive carbon footprint from manufacture that really isn't necessary. Yeah, don't get me started.
So, any memories of kind of your father fixing stuff at the side of the road?
Yeah, I mean, not fixing stuff at the side of the road as well, because there was one occasion when I went down to I was going down to France with them to carry on to go interrailing. And I was going to drop off when they got to the campsite, and we're in the Ambassador, and one of the spheres failed, and I suddenly felt myself listing to port, thinking this isn't right, and then Dad said, "Oh, handling's got a bit funny," and then suddenly we're bobbling along because you can still drive it even when it's empty of fluid, but you're just sitting on rubber. And one of the spheres went, and that wasn't a fix. So we had to wait. Luckily, we had the caravan, so we made a nice cup of tea and sat on deck chairs. But he always carried duct tape, a wire coat hanger, a small toolkit, spare spark plug, some wire. Just the kind of proper things that you're meant to carry, not parts, but things that would get you home.
Yeah, a bodging kit,
totally. And he would use it, and he'd help other people too. He was not an absolute genius, but he knew his stuff. And even back then, there were plenty of people who just didn't have a clue and didn't want to have a clue, weren't interested. Yeah, either worked or it didn't. And the other, I don't know how old you two are. Really young, right? So you might not remember this. But my earliest memories of cars are going along in my grandparents' Triumph 2000 and falling in love with that because it was new. Helping my dad fix stuff in the shed so that the car would work. But the third massive car memory from that time is the sound of a winter morning. The sound of a winter morning was me getting my school uniform on and hearing this. As my dad desperately tried to start the car, get it running so it warmed itself up enough for my mum to give him a lift to the station. So that's the soundtrack of winter from age 5 to age 10 was a car not starting on the driveway. He always had a spare battery charged up and ready to go, and he often needed to use it.
Can you imagine that now? People just wouldn't stand for it, would they? With their heated steering wheels and
No, but maybe we should. Maybe we are way too used to living easy. Everything works. You press a button and it happens. We're spoiled and we don't understand that actually a little bit of suffering probably would do us a bit of good. Knowing that it takes effort to get from A to B, that it's important that we have things working properly and that we understand how they work. I can't think that could be a bad thing for anybody to have a little bit of knowledge. I think they should teach it at schools. I think they should teach parenting at schools.
Yeah. I
think these days, if you start your car on your driveway in the morning, you wouldn't want to leave it there, would you, running away? Because someone would nick it.
Not the cars I drive. Actually, that is true. Just wire it up to the mains or something. I don't know. Somebody did that once. I think it was somebody wired up they're so sick and tired of their car being tampered with. They wired up their driver's door handle to the mains, and I think they nearly killed somebody and got arrested. Maybe that's a bit extreme. Who knows?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But
just need a slightly watered down version of that, really, don't we? I think that's a good idea in principle. But
put a Rottweiler in the back.
Yeah, but the window slightly down so the Rottweiler can breathe.
Yeah, otherwise people will be complaining. You'll get people just walking past, putting a brick through your window because the dog's a bit hot.
You can't win, can you? It's just fraught with problems. Whatever happens,
it's a vicious circle. Yeah.
Yeah, you may as well just be writing your V5 out to a thief on the driveway, just as they walk. Are you a thief? Let me just write it out for you now. I'll insure it as well.
Yeah, the thing is, I still leave the car running. Never had a problem. Maybe I live somewhere nice. I think if I lived in, I don't know, back in my hometown in Luton, maybe I'll think again. The other thing, actually, on this, that's really interesting. I never leave anything valuable in a car because I think to myself, that's just like tempting fate, isn't it? So, and I always leave my cars unlocked. Because I would rather Mr. Thiefy Pants come along, try the door, it opens, have a look round, nothing to nick here, shut the door again, go away. Because in my mind, if they're going to nick a car or if they're going to nick something from it, they'll do it. And I'd rather get a car back or have the car without a smashed window than have one with a smashed window. So I never lock anything, but I never leave anything in it either.
I've got a little story, actually. My first day at college, I went to college to study automotive engineering. And the guys in my class had done national diploma the years before. So I was the only one starting H&D from fresh. And my car was in the car park. I came out to my car at sort of 5 o'clock-ish. And something was just slightly wrong. The door was just ajar. And I walked up to it, and there was this guy sat in my passenger seat.
Brilliant.
And the door was open. It was a Mark II Polo bread van, which I'd messed around with and stuff. He was sat there with a rucksack between his legs, with some of my CDs in his bag, kind of just flicking through my CD collection. And if you'd have asked me at any other time, what would you do if you find someone in your car? You're like, I'm just going to kill him.
Yeah.
And then you're walking up to that, and there's a guy who's probably got a few years on me and probably, 6 foot plus sat in my passenger seat. It's like, if I hit him,
it's not going to go well.
He's just going to get angry, knock me out, then nick my keys, and he'll have my car as well. So I was like, are you all right there, mate? He was like, yeah. He was like, your stuff was just on the floor. And you kind of then go into, okay, I'll play along. Yeah, all right then. Yeah. I was like, can I just check in your bag? So I went through his bag, made sure he'd not got anything. I was like, off you go then. And off he went. And then 5 minutes later, I was then ready to kill him. I was like, okay, I'll go and lock the car. Go and tell him at the college reception, this has happened. Went to lock it and he'd busted the lock. I was like, I can't lock it. Oh, no. So then I had to drive down, kind of park outside, and they were like, I will call the police. So I hung around for a while, and police didn't turn up. And then I passed the police, actually, on my way home. They came around the next day to dust aluminium dust all over my CDs and everything, which I've still got aluminium dust on CD cases now, like 20-something years later. But never caught the chap. He didn't get away with it. But it was like, yeah, just driving home, I was like, yeah, I'm ready to do him in now. But just in that moment, if I hurt him and then he hurts me more, he's going to get the car as well.
Yeah, I think you made the right choice. Got to be honest.
I think there's definitely something in the leaving it unlocked routine, though. I remember my dad's old Merc, someone tried to break into that, which they couldn't do, basically. They tried to sort of wedge the door open and obviously failed to get into it, just for the radio, I assume. I actually remember my dad saying it would have been a lot easier if I had just left the doors open, and because there was a lot of damage.
I always do.
Yeah, no, it does make sense in some respects, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it did bite me on the bum once because I went home for Christmas in the Marina. And I, by the way, Marinas, I have 3 of them, brilliant cars. It's 80 quid each. I drove the wheels off them, fixed them, just went raving with them, went to festivals, just the best. Equal of any Cortina, won't have a word said against them. I've actually got one now in the mag. I've got a coupe. I love it. So I went back home at Christmas, and I went out on Christmas Eve, as you do, and I'd had a few ales, shall we say. And I got back home and I realised I lost my house keys. And it was like 3 a.m. I'm like, I can't wake my mum and dad up. So I'm going to go and keep in the car. So I got in the car, put the seat back, had a kit. And about 6 hours later, the door opened, and it's my next door neighbour and his whole family. And there I'm literally, I've dribbled everywhere. I hadn't been sick, but I was like a vagrant, smelly, skanky vagrant in there. And my neighbour went, "Hello, Danny. Can I use my car, please?" I got in my neighbour's car, and it can't have smelled good in there, has to be said.
And Merry Christmas to you as well.
So obviously he was in the Leave It Unlocked Club too, idiot.
Fantastic.
So there you go, my Christmas story.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that.
I mean, the other things as well that you get from your parents, I think, is driving styles. My mum never used to change gear. She used to get third, leave it there. It's fine. That'll do. Third's good for like really slow and really fast. So why bother with any others?
If only they made an automatic.
Yeah, I know. But my dad would never have an automatic. It was a terrible idea, automatics. And my dad was a bit of a racer. So he'd always leave braking right until the end. He'd never been into the back of anybody, but I've got 2 size 9 footprints in the passenger footwell of every car I've ever travelled in with him. Because I'm like, Dad, what you do? You'd stick it on its nose at a traffic jam. So I hope I haven't inherited their driving style. Maybe I have. I do like to test a red line every now and again.
Was your father inspired by motorsport or anything like that? Was that kind of, he'd watch Grandstand on a Sunday and he thought, I'll give that a go?
Yeah, he liked motorsport. He liked old school Formula One. That was when it was good.
Yeah.
And he was also, he loved rallying.
Yeah.
And he loved autocross as well. Remember Lyddon Park and the Minis and all that kind of stuff. He loved a bit of that. But I know that he really enjoyed a bit of hypermiling. So he would like to choose the rev range really carefully, get set at a certain speed, use momentum. That's one of the reasons why he always broke really late, because he'd like to keep the momentum going just in case. Scary man. And and so he enjoyed driving with the knowledge of what was going on under the bonnet and seeing what MPG he could get. So every now and again, when he was feeling particularly nerdy, he would calculate the MPG and go, I'm beating the book. It's one of the things he enjoyed. So that was fun. And I a few years ago, I got a Honda Insight, which I drove for 6-7 months, which is the early first generation Honda Insight, the proper one with 2 seats, and the spats over the rear wheels. And I really enjoyed trying to get it over 80 mpg. Really, it's a total upset. I never thought that would be something I'd ever do. I really did. And it was fun. Like, I'm on 79. Come on. And if there was a hill ahead, I'd be going, oh no, it's going to go down.
Much safer for your license than trying to beat the registered top speed, I guess, isn't it?
Well, this is the thing, is, I'm now at the moment, my latest acquisition is a Mitsubishi GTO, and it's a proper full fat twin turbo, 4-wheel drive, 4-wheel steer.
License loser.
Yeah, totally. Because it's also incredibly competent, and it basically shields you from the outside world. And I've already got 3 points. Hooray! And I've been working really hard at not going fast in it, and I've already been nicked. What do you do?
I think, it'd be a cool place to wrap it up, Danny.
Oh, nice. Well, I've loved talking to you guys.
Some great stories.
Yeah, and, just car nonsense. There's plenty of it. And all we need is a pint, though. Next time we do it, we need a pint, all right?
Yeah.
And a bus home, obviously.
And just find a car that's unlocked and we can all sleep in it in the back, can't we?
Yeah, we'll sleep in it. That'd be brilliant. Good plan.
Although probably not next to you if there's going to be dribbling. And
no, you wouldn't want that.
It'll be a bit like a motoring Airbnb, Danny's driveway, with kind of a marina and the doors just on the latch, and you could, for £40 a night, you can stay on his driveway.
This is a business idea. Let's keep it under wraps and develop it. Perfect. Good plan.
Definitely. I think that's up there with Rover 800 series auction house, which we've had on a previous one. So we've got a few interesting business opportunities.
Driveway Airbnb. Driveway share B&B.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
That's what we've put. Yeah, share B&B.
Perfect.
Yeah. I'll probably find in a year's time that Danny's come up with a new magazine, and it's all sort of incorporated into that. And,
Drunk Car Sleeping Monthly. Perfect. You could literally... Now, look, we're developing the idea now. You get an app, and you could say, my car is unlocked at this place. If you're drunk walking home, you can pay me £40 and sleep in it. That's brilliant.
It'd be a bit like Zip Car. You could just call it Unzipped Car.
Yeah. It's drunk Uber, isn't it? Drunk stationary Uber.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. It's been good fun.
Thanks, Andy. This time next year, we'll be millionaires.
Thanks, Danny.
Nice to see you guys.
See you later. All the best. So, episode 3.
Nice. There's some very, very good stories in there, wasn't there?
He's a brilliant storyteller. I guess the thespian background kind of helps, but some good stuff.
It's quite a surprise in a way that he's gone into Japanese classics. It's weird to say that a GTO is a classic, but I mean, obviously it is these days because it's nearly 30 years old, isn't it? But I sort of thought there's quite an allegiance to the British classics of all those old names that are rolled off.
I think what he likes, and I guess sort of practical classic stands for that, is kind of something that represents value for money. Like you were saying, that's kind of a 40-50 grand car originally, and he probably paid a couple of £1,000s for it. And that's a bargain, isn't it? Like a lot of engineering for not a lot of money. And if you've got the skills to kind of do the tinkering under the hood, then
yeah. I remember a friend of, I think he might have been in my brother's year at school or something. His dad bought one new, and it was all like, whoa. I mean, that's crazy, really, isn't it, to spend that money on a Mitsubishi back then, or any car, to be fair. But yeah, the depreciation on that was pretty stunning.
Yeah, the fact that he could, I guess his kind of day job helps massively, doesn't it? The fact that he could tell you about these stories, but then also explain kind of the bits behind them, why those vehicles kind of handled like that, and all the rest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realise Issigonis, the guy who designed the Mini, was responsible for kind of the Land Crab and the 3000 and all those others. It would make sense that he was the designer for British Leyland at the time, but you only really, from an outside point of view, hear of him with reference to the Mini. Yeah, and the fact that the Land Crab was his favourite, or whether it was, he said. So that was kind of really interesting.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating, really, as well. Yeah, again, obviously, the dad has had a huge influence on Danny's sort of love of all things automotive, but obviously the way his life has gone, he went into acting and stuff, but then eventually he's gone full circle back to cars and stuff in the magazines, isn't he? So definitely owes that to his father.
And what a resume from his dad. I can't even remember all the stuff his dad's invented, but like potential Nobel Prize winning.
Was that Grandad? Or
I'm not sure actually whether it was his dad or his granddad, but like
I think it was Grandad.
Yeah, what a rundown.
I'd like to look him up on Wikipedia.
Yeah, definitely. And then his dad's rolling around in a Jag now, isn't he?
Yeah, that's good to hear. Good. That's a good retirement car, isn't it, the Jag? How it should be.
Yeah, I think so. That's kind of... That's like, as you go and sign on for your pension, they give you the V5 for an old Jag, kind of a pair of slippers, blanket for your lap, cup of Horlicks.
A jerry can. You'll need that, son.
And off you go. So, that's episode 3. Thank you very much for everyone who's supporting us and listening, tuning in, sharing with friends, and following us on social media.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Roll some credits. Thanks for listening to My Dad's Car podcast. If you have enjoyed this episode, please click subscribe, leave us a review, and follow us on social media. If you'd like to support us further, you can buy us a coffee or sign up to give us a monthly bump start. You'll find details on our website, mydadscar.co.uk. Bye for now.